Hello and welcome back to our class. So our topic for today is all about the different types of flowcharts and diagrams. So we'll start at the discussion on the topic of a data flow diagram. So in a data flow diagram, it has different types of level. And as we recall, data flow diagram shows us what a system does, but not how it does it. So it means it's all about the discussion of different processes inside a system and its sub-process in each process that has been illustrated in different levels. Okay, so in the topic about the levels of diagram, okay, the first level is what we call the context diagram. Okay, so this is the first part of constructing of a data flow diagram. So the context is the summation or the aggregate of all the processes. So it is the highest level view of the system. So in our example, the uh, context diagram illustrates the entity involved and then the system itself, just like this one here. Okay, so we have here the users of the system and then the system itself that acts as the context or summarize uh, element of that data flow diagram pertaining to the system itself. Okay, so in a context diagram, if we want to explode that or redefine what's inside the system, okay, in that step, we are currently creating diagram 0. So, diagram 0 represents the primary individual process in the system at the highest possible level, which is the context diagram. So, it is called as diagram 0 because in a context diagram, it is referred as the process 0. So, if we will be exploding this system into sub processes, we will have the diagram discussion 0. Okay, so that is the diagram 0. Okay, the diagram 0 can contain many processes and the data store, okay, inside a system, but it is still the system itself, okay, together with the entities that are illustrated in the graphical representation of the system itself. Okay, so if we will be uh, if we will be redefining each sub process, that is what we call the low level or lower level diagram. Okay, so this is the third method in constructing of a data flow diagram. We will be decomposing each process in the diagram 0, which is the uh, exploded context diagram. Okay, so the lower level diagram is a DFD or data flow diagram that is generated from the number of nested decompositions from diagram 0. So that means if we will be creating a lower level diagram of the system that we just saw earlier, which is this one here, okay? So if we'll be decomposing this process 0 and then creating a diagram 0, okay, we'll be creating another level, which is the lower level diagram, which discusses on each sub process inside this diagram 0. So for example, we will be having a further discussion on this sub process number 1. Okay, so that is lower level diagram 1. Okay, if we will be discussing sub processes inside this sub process number 2, then we will be creating lower level diagram 2. Okay, so I hope you get my point on creating a lower level diagram. Okay, so in a more detailed discussion regarding these three types of or three levels of diagram, okay, So the context diagram is the top level view that shows the system's boundaries scope. It means it just show the entities or the endpoint or the starting point of the system and everyone who uses it. Okay, they might be uh, a person, organization, or another system. Okay, so that's how they define the scope of the system. Okay, and it only has one process symbol. So if you see a data flow diagram that has only one process symbol, that means it is a context diagram, and uh, you can actually see that the process has a number 0 drawn in the center if you are currently using Jane and Sarson, and at the top of the circle if you are currently using Jordan. Okay, type of uh, illustrations. Okay, and then the another note here is that the data flows connect to the process to the entities. Okay, connect the process to the entities. It's just that no more other processes, no more other data store. It's just one process and the entities involved. Okay, that is a context diagram. So when it comes to uh, the discussion regarding data flow diagrams and other levels. Okay, so uh, we'll be talking the rules regarding those usage or illustrations, but first we'll just discuss the other levels as well. Okay, so after the context diagram we will be having the diagram 0. Okay, so this displays more detail than the context diagram because it shows the entities, the major processes, the data flows, and data stores inside the diagram or the process 0. So it is the exploded partition or decomposed version of the process 0. So diagram 0 is the child of the parent context diagram. It means it was derived from the parent context diagram. So without context diagram, you cannot create a diagram 0. Okay? So the easiest uh, illustration that can be done in data flow diagram is the context diagram. Okay, but further details will be discussed in diagram 0 and lower level diagram. Okay, so in lower level diagram, it is usually necessary to show more detail in each sub process inside the the illustrated processes of diagram 0. Okay, so the design must consider three rules. Okay, so the first one is leveling. Okay, so when it comes to lower level diagram, you cannot just create more processes because you need to discuss more detail. No, we have to level the number of processes as well as to balance the illustration itself. Do not create more, let's say, uh, more complex graphical representation and so on. Okay, so in leveling, the process of drawing increasingly detailed uh, diagrams must be present, and it is also called exploding, partitioning, or decomposing. So so for example, we have the let me just check here. Where's my Okay, so we have here an example of a context diagram, a diagram 0, and a diagram 1, which discusses the uh, the first process on this part here. Okay, so in the context diagram, you can just actually see that the context diagram just contains one process. So it is not indicated here that this is process 0. So for example, we have here a faculty member that uh, is involved in the usage of a course registration system, a student, and then the academic department. So for example, in this course registration system, we do not know how it works. So we have the diagram 0 to illustrate what happens inside this system itself. Okay, so first, the academic department will schedule the data, and it will perform a process. It might be manual or on a computer-based operation. Okay, so schedule the course, and then it will save whatever data that has been processed in this uh, number one here. Okay, process number one. It will save that onto a data store called as offered course, and that data will be used for further processing, like enrolling a student, because a student requests for an enrollment. So we need the list of courses offered. Okay, so that will be coming here. Okay, and then in this diagram 0, okay, we can also see that a process can have one input or more, okay, and can have two or more one or more in output. Okay, it means the process can have uh, an uneven number of inputs and outputs, and that's okay as long as we follow on the uh, usage or illustration of each elements of data flow diagram. Okay, so for example, there we have the process of enrolling the student, because the student request for an enrollment. So after enrolling the student, it will save that onto a database for the course enrollment. Okay, now if that student is actually enrolled in a class, it will produce a class list, or you can actually request for a process to produce a class list that will be given to the faculty member to identify the number of students in uh, the 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 class itself, or who are those students. Okay, so you can actually see that the student database here is not not accepting inputs from other entities. Maybe we can add this to another system like enrollment system, or other enrollment, let's say advisement system, and it will give the list of names for enrolling student, and then to produce the class list itself. Okay, so the offered course database also gives the report on what courses are offered in this sub students, or what course does the student takes. Okay, so that is on the process number 3, producing class list. So as you can see in diagram 0, it is a detailed explanation of the context diagram. Okay, so if we want to further discuss each sub-process here, like this student or schedule course, okay, we will be creating a lower level diagram, and that diagram will be named as the process number of uh, redefinition. Okay, so for example here, okay, in the process 1, under the diagram 0, we will be creating a uh, child data flow diagram of this diagram 0 parent. Okay, creating a more detailed approach on what happens inside this process 1. Okay, and we will call that as diagram 1. So in scheduling a course, okay, the academic department uh, creates the schedule. Okay, they will choose the time and days, as well as they will be assigning a faculty, and that will be stored in the offered course here. Okay, so in that offered course, okay, that is the data store. Okay, that will be used for later processing of other process. Okay, as you can see, it just stopped there. Okay, it is not a black hole because or black hole type of error, because in diagram 0 it produces a an output. Okay, so it just produces an output for other process, but for the sake of uh, discussing diagram 1, it just stopped there because the other process will be done in other diagrams, diagram 2 and diagram 3, if we will be redetailing this two process here. Okay, so in the offered course, okay, besides the schedule and then the faculty assigned, the academic department will also determine the rooms that are available for the courses itself. Okay, so for example, the offered course rechecks if the rooms are available for a certain section or a schedule, and it will give us the access to those uh, course offerings. Otherwise, if there's no available room, or there might be no available faculty to teach that subject or course, or there is no available time or day, then no courses will be offered. Okay, so that's how uh, we uh, we discuss in a more detailed approach in each processes inside the diagram 0. So this is a lower level diagram. We can create more low level diagram by creating diagram 3, diagram 2, and so on. Okay, so in the strategies, or in the other uh, considerations in designing a lower level diagram, okay, we need to have balancing, okay, because it maintains consistency among an entire set of DFDs, just like what you saw earlier, that the course offering doesn't connect other process. Okay, so that's the scope. Okay, the parent inputs and output data flows are preserved on the child of the process itself. It doesn't go beyond the boundaries of the process or other process. Okay, and the data stores might not appear on higher level DFDs, but here in lower level diagrams, it will be displayed on more detailed manner. Okay, so as we as you can recall, the database has different levels. We have the database, we have the tables inside the database, and then inside the tables we have fields or columns and so on, and then we have the record itself. Okay, so in a more detailed approach, you can see more definitions of data stores. Okay, and these are shown in the highest level DFD, but that has two or more process using that data store, just like what you see or what you saw earlier. Okay, so in the data flow diagrams, the data strategies in developing DFDs is the main objective is to ensure that your model is accurate and easy to understand. Okay, meaning there's no terminologies that are not actually, let's say, uh, uh, on a layman's term. Okay, so other terminologies can be understood is or must be understood easily. Okay, so that is one of the objective of this data flow diagram, and there's no other dilly dallying uh, illustrations. Okay, so a diagram should have no more than 9 process symbol, otherwise it is other type of flow chart now. Okay, so a data flow diagram shows what a system does but not how it does it. So on the talk about not how it does it, that is for the other types of flowcharts. Okay, so in talking about other types of flowcharts, we have document flowcharts, we have let's say system flowchart, and then program flowchart. So we have more ways to explain how our system works. Okay, so after the data flow diagram discussion, Okay, we'll move on now to the other types of flowcharts to discuss a system, particularly on our subject. We are on the accounting information system, so we'll be focusing on creating document flowchart, process flowchart, and system flowchart in an accounting information system. Okay, so in the talk about document flowcharts, so what are these? Okay, document flowcharts illustrate the relationship among process and the documents that flow between them. Okay, so it contains more details than data flow diagram. So it means it just not shows us what a system does, but what documents are required on each process of the system. So it is more detailed than data flow diagram, and uh, it clearly depicts the separation of function in a system. Okay, so in a document flowchart, unlike the data flow diagram that only has four symbols, which is the entity, the process, and then the data flow, and then the data store. In document flowchart, since it is more detailed than data flow diagrams, it involves other symbols for documents, just like this one here. Okay, so the symbol set for the document flowcharts gives us the analogy on what document or what is really happening inside this process and who does it. Okay, so we have here several symbols. Okay, so we have here an oval, or sometimes it is a rectangle with rounded edge. Okay, it is a terminal showing the source or destination of documents and reports. Okay, so sometimes it is an entity. Okay, so just like data flow diagram, we have an entity. So the entity in data flow diagram is illustrated as a rectangle with a shaded part for Jane and Sarasot, and just a rectangle for Jordan. But here in document flowchart, they are illustrated as oval or uh, uh, rectangle with rounded edge. Okay, so other types of or other symbols represents for example, we have here the source document. Okay, most likely this is a rough illustration, but you can also see other symbols here, just like a paper. Okay, so if you saw a symbol that looks like a paper with a curve here, okay, it is a document or report. Okay, it might be source or sync or report. Okay, it might be multiple or single instance, like this one here. This is a single instance, but if you have other documents, that is a batch document. Okay, or uh, let's say bundle. Okay, and then we also have here an inverted, let's say uh, uh, cone. Okay, or a cup. Yeah. Okay, so a symbol of a cup uh, pertains to a manual operation done by the entity involved in that process. Okay, so we also have here a triangle. Sometimes this is an inverted triangle that shows that this is a file for storing source documents and reports. Sometimes it is just a note or another copy of the document that has been produced, okay, for storage. Okay, so for example, you have your receipt every time that you buy something else. Okay, so another copy is printed, and that copy is for the seller or the cashier, okay, for reference purposes or other backup, something like that. Okay, so we also have here a parallelogram. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, or an slanted rectangle here. Okay, it represents accounting records. Okay, so it might be journal, register, or logs or ledgers. It just accounting records. Okay, so this is actually visible in accounting information system. Okay, so here we have other symbols. Okay, okay, it might be like this one, a batch total or batch document, or it might be a collection of this symbol, okay, on top of each other and so on. Okay, we can see an example later. Okay, we also have a circle, okay, that acts as an on-page connector to other users or entities in the usage of a system. Okay, so in a document flowchart, uh, the entities are divided into the views of the page. Okay, so we call that as page. Okay, so if we have a lot of pages, okay, a lot of entities that uses the system, we use off page connector here. It is like uh, a square with a pointed side. Okay, meaning a paper that leads to another page. Okay, and then of course the lines, okay, descriptions or of process or comments are illustrated with a line and then a blank box with an open side, and then the document flow line, of course, indicated with an arrow where the data flows. Okay, so for example, we have a uh, four entities here: the sales department, the credit department, the warehouse, and then the shipping department. Okay, as you can see, in each department or in each entity, they have their process, and each process requires documents. That's where we come in with this document flowchart. So for example, in the sales department, we will be having some transactions from a customer. Okay, so if you recall correctly, okay, on the earlier discussion, the customer represents the symbol for terminal, showing the source or the source documents or reports. Okay, so it means a customer will give us something. Okay, or the sales, the customer will give something to the sales to create the document for their order. So for example, the sales department talks to the customer, and the customer just states what he or she wants to buy. Okay, and it will be created with a document. Okay, this is the order itself, and the sales department will prepare the sales order. So as you can see, this is a cup type of shape, and that is a manual operation. Okay, it means the sales department writes down the order of the customer. Okay, and after writing down that order or preparing that sales order, they will have the output sales order number one, just like how we do this in a usage of an accounting information system. The sales department talks to the customer will give a draft, or sometimes it is a let's say a quotation. Okay, and we input those details, we prepare, okay, manually those orders in the computer operation to give us the sales order document. Okay, so it might be sales order number one and so on. As many customer as possible, you can have many documents. Okay, after preparing a sales order. So this is the first stage in constructing the document flowchart, showing areas of activity in each entity here. So this is just for sales department. Now this is the page itself. Okay, so the page itself can be enough, or sometimes can be uh, or can have more pages. Okay, so in other that department, okay, let's see here. So for example, we stop there on the sales order, creation of sales order. Okay. Now, those documents will be having another, let's say this is what? The triangle, okay, inverted or uh, upward triangle. Okay, this is the file for storing source documents and reports. Okay, since it is inverted, this is a report. Okay, so the order has been duly noted. Okay, so that means a copy was created for backup purposes. Okay, or note. Okay, that's why they indicated that as an N. Okay, so that is used for other purposes later on. Okay, so now the sales order, okay, will go to the credit department to check if the customer has an existing balance or other let's say other details about the customer. So they will create, or they will check the sales order, they will check the credit of the customer. Okay, they'll check his or her balance, if he or she has an outstanding balance, and if there is no records in our accounting documents here, okay, that is simultaneous in checking the credit of the customer, which is a manual operation. Okay, they will sign the sales order, okay, and give that back to the sales department. It means it has been approved by the credit department. Okay, so the signed sales order will now go to the distribution of sales order and file. Okay, so the customer will have the copy that says your order is now approved and we will deliver that to you. Just like how we see the report of online shopping like Shopee or Lazada or other online shopping platforms, that gives us the report what happens after we confirm our order or we place our order, if that will be rejected, approved, or so on. Okay, so that is our uh, document, and that will be duly noted again. This is a report. Okay. Okay, so after distributing the sales order and then the file itself, okay, the sales order will now be connected. Okay, so as you can see, this is a circle. This is an on-page connector, okay, to other entity. So for example, we'll now go to an on-page connector for the warehouse. Okay, since the sales order has been approved, then the warehouse will check the details of that sales order, and they will prepare the item. Okay, they will pick the goods and then update the stock records. So for example, they just pack the goods ready for ship out and so on. Okay, and then after repacking the goods, then they will declare that that good is not available for other customers because it is packed and ready to ship out. Okay, now if they have just prepared the goods, and that sales order document will be passed on to the shipping department. Okay, so as you can see, we have the on-page connector A here. Okay, it means it also happens simultaneously here while warehouse is preparing for the repacking of goods. Okay, so warehouse is repacking the goods while shipping department creates a shipping order for that goods. Okay, that's why we have an on-page connector A and then A here. Okay, so the sales order of either of these documents here will be realigned or recheck on this manual process here, and then the document or report will be given to the customer uh, after preparing the shipment, if or after preparing the report of if his or her order has been packed and ready to ship out, and so on, just like we experience in Lazada or Shopee. So that's how we receive those reports. Okay, so they also have a report on themselves. Okay, so this is the finished document flowchart showing areas of activity for a sales transaction between sales department, credit department, warehouse, shipping department for the customer itself. Okay, so that is how document flowcharts work. Okay, so we also have other types of flowchart. Okay, we have system flowchart. Okay, so now we'll go to the system flowchart. Okay, so the system flowchart are used to represent the relationship between the key elements, the input sources, the programs, and output products of computer systems. So we'll be focusing only on computer systems, unlike the uh, document flowchart that is good for illustrating manual operations for each entity or each person involved in the usage of a system or inside the system. In a system flowchart, okay, it only focuses on the computer system itself. Okay, so it depicts the type of media being used, either it is on paper, magnetic tape, magnetic disc, and terminals. Okay, so in practice, it is not much difference between document and system flowchart because it is almost the same. Okay, but document flowchart is more detailed than system flowchart. Okay, other symbols here are also the same, just like here. Okay, so in a system flowchart, okay, you can see the hard copy is also on the symbol of the uh, document, either source or sink. Okay, the computer process is illustrated as a rectangle, the storage is illustrated as a cylinder, and then the magnetic tape is like a call out. Okay, circle with a uh, rectangular side edge. Okay, then the terminal input or the output device, it might be a screen or what, and so on. Okay, but sometimes it is illustrated using this symbol here. Okay, and then of course this flow. Okay, so the Z flow, okay, represents a real-time online connection. Okay, this is for online systems and so on that uses real-time uh, processing. Okay, we'll go on the discussion or other discussion regarding batch processing and real-time processing. Okay, that will be on other discussions. Okay, so for example of this system flowchart, we have here a first stage in constructing system flowchart showing areas of activity between sales department, computer operations department, and then the warehouse and then the shipping department. Okay, so just like the earlier discussion, okay, in this flowchart, it is more on a computer base. So the customer, okay, talks with the sales department, gives his customer order document, okay, and that will be typed in on the terminal. Okay, so once the terminal, which is the computer itself, it gives that for processing of this computer operations department. They will edit or check the credit of the customer. So they will rely on the credit file or the records of the customer. Okay, as you can see, this is almost the same as the earlier discussion that we talked about. Okay, this is illustrated as an accounting document, but here it is illustrated as a storage for the files for credit of different customer. Okay, so after checking the credit and editing the order or verifying the order, they will save that to the sales order. Okay, and that sales order storage, okay, will be providing the inputs to update the program to create an accounting or accounts receivable file for the customer, okay, because the customer orders something, and then an update for the inventory itself, okay. So as you can see, it is more on the discussion regarding what happens inside the computer, okay, not what happens between the different people with their documents on their hands, just like the earlier discussion, okay. So if we will be continuing this stages here, we'll be having like this one here. Okay. So we stop on the terminal, but after confirming the order of the customer, the sales department will inform the customer order and then duly note that one. Okay. And in here on the computer operations department, after updating the program, okay, for the sales order, it will create a sales order having a connection between warehouse and shipping department. So we still have the on-page connector here, okay, meaning this happens simultaneously with this starting point of the shipping department, okay. Just like the earlier discussion, it is more on manual processing na manual processing here, okay. So warehouse will pick the goods, update the stock records, and so on, okay. So it is like a other illustration of the document flowchart, but this is more on what happens on the computer itself, okay. So almost the same, okay. So now we'll go on to the other type of flowchart. So we just discussed data flow diagrams, okay. For further discussion, we provided the different levels, okay. Data different levels, context diagram, diagram 0, and the lower level diagram. And if we want more, we have the document flowchart, okay. And then if we want to see what happens in a computer, okay, we have this program flowchart, okay, program flowchart, sorry, system flowchart, okay. So after having this system flowchart, we'll talk about the program flowchart, okay. This is what happens in the process of the program or the system itself, okay. So it illustrates the logic used in programs. So it has a few symbols here. We have the terminal with the with an oval shape here, okay. An input and output operation, okay, with a slanted rectangle or parallelogram, and then we also have a rectangle here and a decision block with a diamond, okay, having a yes or no on each side. So that's why they use diamond there. And then of course we have the flow of logical process or the line, okay. So any program flowchart, okay, let me just search for an example of that one. Oops, where it is. Okay, let me just pick this one and then okay, this is an example of a program flowchart. So let me just pick a very simple example. Okay, so let me just, okay, here we have an example of a program flowchart. Okay, so we have the terminal, okay, this is the start and stop. Okay, it always uh, have the program flowchart always have uh, that label. Okay, so after indicating the start of the program, okay, it will create the input, okay, whatever is needed for the program to, or the process to uh, perform, okay, and then we have the process itself, okay. So for example, this is a, a midterm, or maybe that M1, or period 1, period 2, period 3, and 4, okay. We have here an average, okay. So for example, this is a grade computed with the average of those 4 inputs, or 4 scores maybe. And then if that grade is lesser than 50, then uh, lesser than 50, then it will give us an output of fail. Okay, if that grade falls on the no side, or uh, false side, okay, so if the grade is lesser than 50, or the computed grade is, let's say, 75, then it is not on less than 50, and it will give us the output of pass. That's why we have this decision block here. Okay, so that is how it works. Okay, and then either of these two outputs here, okay, it will give us the report, and the program stops. Okay, that is just how simple the program process is. Okay, other examples of a program process includes, let's say, the order wants to uh, continue a transaction, knowing the computation of the order itself has a, let's say, more than his or her budget. Maybe yes, maybe not. Okay, so we can create a program flowchart on that one. Okay, so that is how the different types of flowchart helps us uh, to, let's say, illustrate how everything in computer, in manual, in a process works. Okay, data flow diagram gives us what the system does. Okay, more detailed explanations for its 3 levels, and if you want more, we can use document flowchart. If we want to see its effects on computer-based operation, we have system flowchart. And then if we focus on each process, then we can create program flowchart on each process. Okay? Records in our accounting document, program flowchart on that one. Okay, so that is how the different types, more detailed explanations for its 3 levels, and if you want more, we can use document flowchart. If we want to see its effects on computer-based operation, we have system flowchart. And then if we focus on each process, then we can create program flowchart on each process. Okay, so that ends our discussion regarding the different types of flowchart in uh, illustrating a accounting information system in a graphical form. So I hope you learned something regarding those topics I had discussed today. And uh, again, thank you for the time listening, and have a nice day.